Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta. Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta.
Hello, everyone. As always, I'm Eero with the North American Sauna Society, and I'm here with my fellow Sam. Sam, how are you?
Doing well, Eero. Doing well. I can't wait to talk today. More sauna. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Risto, who do we have with us today?
We have my good sauna friend, Jeff Pyzyk. He's important for my sauna story way back when we first got into it, but I won't go into too much detail there because today is more about his sauna story and just getting a chance to hear about his sauna experience. He's one of the biggest sauna enthusiasts I know. He probably saunas more than anyone else I know. And so it's great to have him on the show with us today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I always say I'm not in the sauna business, but I'm a heavy user.
How did you like, it's like, how can you say that? It's like, what is this thing with sauna and you?
Well, my original exposure to sauna was in, of course, health clubs and that sort of thing, where you sit in a dry room without any water on the rocks, and it just gets hot and it's uncomfortable. And I never really enjoyed a real sauna until we bought a lake home up in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. And I met my neighbors. Two of them had saunas. One had a wood burning sauna and the other had an electric sauna. And they invited me for a sauna just about the first night that we bought our place. And I was trying to be a good neighbor and say, okay, all right. I wasn't sure what to expect. And at about 6 o'clock that evening, they started yelling my name from the water. And I went down to the sauna, and there were about 5 or 6 sweaty men sitting inside a small room that was about 180 degrees. And I sat down, and, they offered me a beer and started to have conversation and so on. And everyone was sweating in this room. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And they have a tradition at our lake where they will fill these plastic 1.5 liter whiskey bottles with water full of lake water, and then pour that whiskey bottle, on the rocks. So they asked me, they held up a clear plastic bottle and said, do you want some? And I said, no, I'm fine with beer. And they poured water on the rocks, and I felt the heat scald my neck. And I was like, what am I doing here, And as the room really heated up, one by one, they ran out and dove in the lake. And of course, I followed. And once I jumped in the water after that hot, experience, I was hooked. At that moment, I thought, this is great, So year after year, I was probably, this was 1998 when we bought, and for the first 5 or 6 years, I would wait for them to have a sauna, and then I would always, join whenever I could. And I finally, about 17 years ago, thought I really need to build my own sauna. And so I built my first sauna up at our lake house. And it was an electric, I used an electric heater because I thought that would be more convenient there. And so I found this place is about 45 minutes from where we live. So I found myself driving 45 minutes to have a sauna, which was, starting to be three times a week or something like that every weekend. And so, as the years went by, I thought I need to have a sauna at home. And as I started to, research Finnish sauna and saunatimes.com, Glenn's website, and Facebook pages and so on, I thought I really should do a wood burner at home to make it a more authentic, type of sauna. And so about 7 years ago, I built my own sauna here at home.
Oh, that's awesome, Jeff. Did anyone else other than your neighbors, offer any input, or were you kind of on your own little mission there?
I was a little bit on my own, in terms of there wasn't as much information out there. And there, Christopher was very early on started Wood Burning Sauna, the Facebook page. And I was probably one of the early people that was on that Facebook page. And I found it very interesting. People started interacting, and it was kind of new, really. It was sort of innovative, and, getting ideas from other people and so on, and how they're building their saunas. So after a while, Christopher asked, if I would be an administrator with him. So the two of us administrate the Wood Burning Sauna Facebook page. But it was very helpful. And of course, it's grown and exploded since then, and with everything that's going on in the Twin Cities and in Minneapolis area and up in, northern Michigan and so on, it's been crazy. I mean, it's just really, we've seen sauna taking off in North America, from its original Finnish roots and the Iron Range. Now people building some very elaborate, beautiful saunas, compared to what I built, which was a fairly simple, kind of inexpensive building, but effective.
Do you feel like you say that the sauna has exploded in North America, and that's pretty much so? But do you like we at NAS, North American Sauna Society, we pretty often still see that many of the saunas that are built in the basements, or master bathrooms or stuff like, places like that. So how do you feel about the quality of sauna in general, or do you have a view on that?
Well, I'm seeing so many. There's a couple of Facebook pages that, sauna design, construction, use, and enjoyment. That's a Facebook page that's fairly popular. Wood fire saunas, another Facebook page. And when you see some of the buildings that people are building, and you look at some of these mobile saunas, I mean, people are spending $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on very elaborate saunas. And when I first built mine, I live on Lake Michigan here at home, but I'm on a 120-foot high bluff, so I can't get down to the lake to cool off. So early on, I thought I need to have a solution to cool down between my sauna rounds. So I, just got the idea of having a stock tank full of cold water, and I built a cover for it. And so that's my mechanism for cooling down between, sauna rounds. I jump in the cold water. But you see people now with cold plunges that have filtration systems on them, and they have refrigerant systems that keep the water cold. And I mean, it's getting very, very crazy. I mean, interesting, that people are, I just feel like it's really an emerging trend. And it's this whole thermoculture it's cold plunge coupled with the sauna, and the two combined, I think is really becoming something very popular that people are exploring and building and really investing in now for their health, their mental health, and so that's how I see it. But it's hard to gauge really how, I don't know what the metric is to measure that, and I don't know if you have any metrics that you can point to that show popularity of sauna in North America, is how it's growing or what.
Well, I think,
go ahead.
there are some general, things that we can look to. I do know, Risto, you're big with Google Trends. I love seeing your posts, you know, about Google Trends. But I know recently, as of this year, you know, the sauna interest has really started to outpace some of the other categories, such as hot tubs and things like that. So, you know, we are seeing, you know, tremendous growth in the interest. You know, I do think that a lot of the posts, you know, on some of these Facebook pages, on Reddit, on, you know, Instagram, things like that, I think we are seeing a lot of the higher end things just because it's really good for social media and people want to share that kind of thing. I'd be interested to see all the saunas that aren't being shared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a trend, you know, and I especially heard from businesses during COVID, people who are selling saunas, that especially during COVID, there was a huge uptick. But I do see it in kind of in general, a little bit more of awareness. And then I think in the social media groups, you have people like Jeff and myself, just kind of like all kind of coalescing together. And that does, you know, once that community comes together, that inspires other people, you know, that also grows things. And you mentioned the cold plunge, and all the people that we've sauned with, I feel like every time I sauna with someone, I learn something from them. And I learned from you, Jeff, to really like lean into that cold plunge. It might have been the time when I sauned with you and my brother, or it was Julie. I can't remember who it was with, but it was colder outside. The cold plunge was pretty cold.
Right.
And up to that point, I think my cold plunges were like 20 seconds. You know, like I was in, cold, out, you know, pretty quick. And then I saw you cold plunge, and you're just like leaning back into it. And I'm like, he's in there for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was pretty like revolutionary to me.
Excuse me. You know, I that has been part of my routine, is to really try to get cold. And it's great in fall and winter and spring and summer with my tub here. I sometimes will get bags of ice and put bags of ice into the cold tub just to get it colder. But I think it's really important to have that contrast. We talked about sauna spins, you know, and I think we had a few of those when we were really in the cold weather and the cold water, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was very pronounced.
Yeah.
And then
We lost. Oh, here we go. We lost you for a second.
okay, sorry. But I'll cold plunge even without a sauna, you know, like I've really come to love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Jeff and Risto, maybe for those that, you know, don't cold plunge, you know, what are you noticing? What are some of the benefits that you're noticing personally?
I think it helps you to stay comfortable in the hot room longer. And I think it just sort of awakens the whole experience, you know. When you're I like to go in the cold plunge, you know, and stay in it for a while and then sit outside. My sauna doesn't have a changing room, but my changing room is really it's a deck that's between the sauna and my house, and it's sort of a protected area on 3 sides. And I just have some folding chairs that I sit outside. After I get out of the cold plunge, I sit outside for a while until I really get cold. Then I go back into the hot room, and it's easier to, you know, sit there longer in a more pronounced, you know, higher heat environment. And it just really feels great. I mean, your whole body is kind of tingling, and it's a really great experience, you know.
Yeah, I think that the cold plunge, you know, unlocks those like pretty wild sauna spins, you know, so
Yeah.
you feel like you kind of, the world around you got unzipped and you're kind of floating, but without nausea. Although I did have an instance a few months ago where I had some, like a drop in blood pressure. So you do want to pay attention to your body. It is pretty intense. And then if you need to dial things back a little bit, like dial it back.
So maybe start slow.
Yeah, be careful, and what I've noticed is if I am in the hot room, of course my pulse will be 120 beats per minute or something like that. I go into the cold plunge, especially when it's very cold, let's say 40 degrees in fall or spring or winter. And if I stay in the cold plunge for a certain period of time, it'll get to the point where my pulse is 45 beats, 40 beats per minute. And I can see the actual water move with every beat of my heart. And then I get out and then sit outside. It's a pretty intense experience.
Yeah, that's extreme. That's awesome. I mean, and if it feels good, keep doing it, right?
Yeah. It's I do it almost every day. Pretty close to every day. I miss a day once in a while, but I enjoy it.
I think there's to answer your question, we don't actually know for sure because most of the sauna companies are so small that they don't have to announce their numbers. But we assume that sauna sales doubled in North America during the pandemic. But now there's a difference now. What the people who are in the know, they mostly, like you do, you speak about that contrast heat therapy. Many people don't do that because they don't necessarily know about that contrast hot and cold therapy. And just I know that this is and before I go to the next topic, but anyway, so a lot of saunas sold, yes, but the hardcore of people who are in the know, that is also expanding, but it's expanding slowly. But there's a clear trend, just like even here in the metropolitan New York area where I live, there are like these big spas that are being built as we speak, and the core of those spas are if you want to call it the Finnish style sauna. So there's always a good sauna somewhere, and there also the cold therapy to go with, or different flavors of the cold therapy. Just one question, and I know this is a silly question, but you said that you like to do the cold because you can stay in the hot room longer. So why would you want to do that?
I think it's just more of a penetrating heat where it and sometimes I will come out of the cold, sit in the hot, and I won't throw water on the rocks right away. And I just let my body gradually get warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. And that's some of the most enjoyable heat, really, that you can ever feel. Sometimes I'll be cold and I'll throw the water on the stones right away, but I like to just feel that change from cold to hot. As your body warms up, it's just one of the most enjoyable things, and you feel that tingling heat in your forehead and the tightening of your skin in your forehead. It's just an amazing feel. I mean, it's just amazing, really. It's one of the most enjoyable things, better than drugs.
Yeah, and I think the way that Jeff is using sauna is different than, like, if you see on social media, especially like in the health crowd, like if you're watching Joe Rogan or someone that's recommending doing sauna for health, they might be in there in an exercise bike, they might be exercising in the sauna or kind of pushing the cold plunge, and you see people really kind of like just really gritting and bearing through it, like they're doing reps of like really heavy weightlifting. But when I've sauned with Jeff, and what I've seen in him and learned from him, is this enjoyment or relaxing into it. You're trying to get as much of the heat and cold as you can. because it's wonderful.
Yeah, and then you stay in until the idea of a cold plunge is the best possible thing you could possibly ever, experience, when you get to the point where you really want to get cold, you're in the hot room long enough, and um, it's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. But I've noticed now there's going up to Larchmont and to the sauna event up in Duluth, north of Duluth. There's kind of I feel like there's some emerging sort of styles of sauna that one I would call more of a low and wet, like a lower temperature, like 160, 170, but a higher, baseline humidity. So, where the room is not as hot, but it's a higher humidity. And then pouring, the water on the stones, it produces like almost a delayed effect where you can feel the steam. Like it takes a second or two, and then the steam really hits you, like with an Iki stove, or I haven't tried a Hume, but with these rock tower stoves, and it's a very interesting sort of contrast. And what I like and enjoy, what I practice, is what I call more of a high and dry, where I'm at a higher temperature, like 210 to 220 Fahrenheit. And the baseline is not a high humidity until you pour water on the stones, and then you get the humidity. So it's just different styles. One is not better or necessarily worse than the other. It's personal preference, I think, that people enjoy. And it was interesting to try some of the different saunas at Larchmont. And I missed you there. I know you were there Sunday and I had to leave, but did you get to try any of the saunas, Christopher?
I didn't. We just met some folks and had breakfast for them. I got to see my online friend Grant, but my brother was there and he didn't get to use a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I did get to peek inside. That was fun.
Yeah. No, I tried one of the saunas with the Iki stove. That was Eric Bongard's mobile sauna, and it was very interesting. Very interesting, like just a different style, that I hadn't experienced, and I enjoyed it. So, it's different strokes for different folks, I guess, but
yeah. And I think
go ahead, Risto.
Yeah, sorry. I think even like for myself, it might vary from round to round, like there might be a round where I just want just to relax in the heat, not really put tons of steam on. And then there might be a round, usually later into my sauna rounds, where I just want to destroy myself with steam. So, it might depend on the day, it might depend on the round, the company, all kinds of different variables.
Right. No, and sometimes, I have a Kuma stove, so sometimes I'll just shut the intake after it's fully heated up. I'll shut the intake off and I'll close the damper on the stove completely, so there's no longer like a fire, like the fire is kind of dying down and just sort of on the downside. And I enjoy more of that higher baseline humidity versus a higher dry temperature. But yeah, I do prefer the high dry myself. I call it high and dry. So I'm like kind of differentiating the high and dry from the more low low and high humidity, or low and wet.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I would probably fall in line with probably that high and dry community myself, and maybe that's a wood burning thing.
Yeah, I mean, the sauna that I was in was a Iki wood burner, and but it was just always at a low, like 160, 170 temperature, and you sort of get addicted to pouring water on the stones. You can't, it's like you find yourself pouring, how do you say it, Eero?
Lulu, Lulu.
Lulu.
Yeah.
You're pouring Lulu on the stones like over and over and over again because you want that wave of heat. You want to feel that wave of heat come over your body. And I got off on a tangent there. Sorry, but
yeah, no, that's I agree with you, and it's kind of interesting because I've said this many times over, but I've been in this country for 25 years. And for some reason, I don't know, I missed those open sides heaters completely while being back home in Finland. And it was kind of an interesting process because I started going sauna bathing with this group of people, and there was an open sides stove. And this was like I've been going with the same gang for about more than 10 years now. And many of the guys were new to sauna when we started this thing, so we didn't push it. And so the heat was a bit lower, and it was clearly more humid than I was, accustomed to. So it was kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if you really push, open sides heater, and like we all agreed here, it's just like, it's a different feel. It's not worse, it's not better, but it's just a little bit different. But yeah. I clearly come from the old school, it's like closed sides and hot and dry kind of a road. And I can't, like, in my little world, it's like access to outdoors is a must. If there's I can live without the cold plunge. I can easily without the cold plunge, but I need a cold shower and access to outdoors, and I'm fine.
Right. Yeah, at least a cold shower at a minimum, and or a roll in the snow.
Yeah, that is cold.
There you go.
It is cold. It can't get colder than that. Well, at least in my world.
That's when you see the skin get red on your body, and that's pretty fun, especially in the fresh snow.
Yeah, and Jeff, your place at the lake, I'm trying to remember. I don't think we ever did this, but I saw pictures of you doing this, and I'd like for us to talk about this. You'll even cold plunge during the winter, right? I'd like to hear about how you do that.
Yeah. So our pier will stay in all winter. We're just in an area where there's not a lot of currents that can move, the pier around when the water freezes. So the pier stays in all winter. And so our neighbors started cutting a hole in the ice years and years ago, and I started to do it. I originally used a chainsaw. I didn't like the way the oil from the chainsaw would get into the water, and you cut, Avanto, the hole in the ice. So I got a hand auger, and what I do now, in a finish ice saw, that's a big, hand saw, and I cut 4 holes in the ice, and then I just go from hole to hole with the ice saw, and then you push the ice, from the hole under, you have to push it down so it floats under the rest of the ice, and it opens up the hole. And I put my ladder for my pier right into the hole, and I mean, water can only be so cold, right? It's 32 degrees is the freezing point of water. So people think it's crazy, but it's no more colder than if it were, really, really cold fall day. And it's really probably the best experience is when it's in the middle of winter and maybe, 0 or below 0, and you're coming out of a 200-degree room and going into a hole in the ice. One of my favorite things to do.
How long does it take to prepare that hole?
Maybe, depending on how thick the ice is, it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Okay.
It's a good way to warm up before a sauna.
And then, Jeff, do you cut all of your own local wood, or do you bring in a couple loads of it when you're running low, or?
my son is, we bought a log splitter, and we have all of this dead ash around Wisconsin now. All the ash trees died from the emerald ash borer.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the trees are standing, they've been dead for a couple years. They're already seasoned and they're everywhere. They're basically free for the taking if you want to take away ash logs. And so my son's been cutting wood. He just brought me a trailer load today, that a couple of face cords that we just stacked. He stacked for me. He's a good son, but yeah, so that's what I've been burning ash, and it burns really well. I mean, it burns like oak. It burns pretty long, and it has a lot of BTUs in the wood, so that's been good.
Excellent.
That experience about, you know, cutting a hole in the ice, and then as you said so rightfully, you know, or pronounce it also right, that avanto that comes from, you know, the hole in the ice you plunge into and that stuff. For some of our listeners or viewers, that might sound a little extreme, you know, and I'm constantly afraid that when people when they listen or watch us, that this is like so extreme stuff that they just want to stay away. But at the same time, obviously, I guess we don't want everybody to do that same thing, but we would love everybody to feel the same as we do when we do that. But somehow to be able to gimmick that experience, because, you know, where I'm from, you know, my original home is in Helsinki, Finland, and now I'm here in New York, and there's no place where I can start cutting holes anytime soon. So what can we, is there any advice that we can give to people about, you know, how to mimic that this thing? Is like we already mentioned cold shower, but like how do we go about telling people this contrast heat therapy experience and how it's like better than maybe the one and done people that we, you know, been talking about here before?
I think the simplest thing you can do is go to your local, we have in the Midwest here, Fleet Farm and Fleet Tractor Supply, and they all sell these either plastic or galvanized steel tubs. And you can buy one of those for a little over $100 and make a simple cover for it. I made just a cover for mine out of cedar, and I put a little petcock on the drain on mine, so I can turn the petcock and drain it whenever I want. And then what I did was near my cold tub, I installed a frost-free hose bib, and it doesn't freeze in the winter. And if you use, you can either use a heated hose, or you can use a short, I have like a 12-foot rubber hose. If it freezes up while the sauna is heating up, I just throw it in the sauna, and there's no longer any ice in it. And I refill it in the winter, every week or two. I'll drain it and refill it because, you know, it stays so cold. In the summer, probably every couple days I'll drain it and refill it. But you can keep it from freezing in the winter with a stock tank heater. It's about $25-35. You plug it in, you put it in the cold tub, and it won't freeze over the winter unless you're really in extreme, you know, 30 below zero climate. But, you know, it gets 10 below here, and mine stays open all winter long. So it sounds silly to go out in 10-degree weather and get into a 32 or 35 degree cold plunge, but it actually, that water, because it, you know, it envelops your body completely, it cools you down so quickly, and it really sort of penetrates, you know, your bones with that cold that you want to, you know, cool down between between the hot room.
So what, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, the more and more we talk about cold plunge, I definitely got to get at least a DIY one set up, because I mean, the hose, you know, can only do so much. So yeah, I think a stock tank and maybe a little platform setup and a lid. Now down in South Carolina, luckily I've got a big chest freezer that I'll probably end up, you know, freezing a bunch of like 1 gallon jugs of water with, you know, maybe half a dozen of those. Throw that in there and see what kind of temperatures I can get down to. And you know, I've seen a lot of things on the DIY crowd community with the cold plunge, and they're building the base, and then they're, you know, insulating that base, so they're kind of creating somewhat of a cooler effect. We'll see what we can get down to.
Yeah, there are people that are they're converting chest freezers to cold plunges now. That's become popular, and I don't know much about it, but I know there's a lot of online material where people are using these big chest freezers as cold plunges.
Yeah, it's just wild. Where there's a will, there's a way, I guess.
Yeah.
So what's the now we've mentioned, or you mentioned that you, depending on how busy you are, you sunbathe almost daily, right? That's like or every evening. So what's your sauna routine? So it's like we've mentioned, you do the cold plunge, the hot, and what else is involved with your sauna?
Yeah, so I typically I will stuff the stove with wood. You know, I when I start my fire, I use these fat wood sticks. They're pine, like stump wood from pine trees. They're saturated with pine, and I use a map torch. It's a yellow bottle, and you press a button and this thing's a blowtorch, and I just start these fat wood sticks. I stuff it with wood, and an hour and a half later, it's about 180 degrees. I throw about 3 or 4 more pieces of wood in before I go in. And when I go in, it's 190, 200 degrees. And I shut down the stove damper to about 1/4, 1/3 open. And I shut down the chimney damper so it's maybe 1/4 open. And I go in for about, if the room is pretty hot before I go in, like sometimes it'll be 210 or something before I go in, I'll dip in the cold plunge first before I sit on the benches, because the benches might be a little hot. But then I'll stay in there for about 15 minutes, and I probably pour water on the rocks maybe 2 or 3 times during a 15-minute. And this is not like a rule or something, you know, or I have a clock on the wall. It just is however I, staying as however, as I feel. But I will, maybe pour 2 or 3 ladles of water during a 15-minute session. And then I go out, get in the cold plunge, sit outside in the cold air for a while till I'm cold, and then go back in and do another 10 to 15 minute, round in the hot room, and repeat and do it about 4 or 5, 6 times, depending on how I feel. That's my routine pretty much.
And now, Jeff, I think Eero talked about this. Some of our listeners might think, hey, that's extreme. That's crazy. What, why would you want to go from hot to cold, that many times? Jeff, if you had like an elevator pitch, if you had to tell somebody, hey, this is why I do these things, and maybe a concise, short, maybe it's your motto, maybe it's your pitch. How would you maybe convince a stranger, hey, this is what I do and this is why it's great?
I do it, to be honest, just to lower my level of anxiety, for my mental health, just for the calmness, the peace, the buzz. It basically is a way to really reduce your stress, reduce your anxiety. And if it means better physical health, that's great. But for me, it's really about just relaxing and really, taking away any stress, any worry, any anxiety. And I think
That's wonderful. I completely agree with you, Jeff. I think that's one of the biggest, maybe most overlooked benefits of sauna is the, just that relaxation, mental health aspect of just being able to kind of disconnect and do something that feels good, that you want to be doing, that maybe doesn't have to have a lot of responsibilities tied to it.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you sunbathe mostly by yourself or with your family, or do you invite your buddies over?
Well, so it's probably different in the spring, summer, fall a little bit. When we're at our lake home, it's more social. And so it's guests, friends, relatives, family. But during the week at home, it's pretty much me.
Yeah.
It's just pretty much just me. Once in a while, my one of my sons will join me, but during the week, it's mostly solo.
And every now and again, weird strangers from out of town. So
Yeah.
and I won't go too far into that story. I'm gonna on purpose hold back. Shameless plug that we're planning our family sauna podcast. So we need part 2 of this interview for that, where I tell our story of meeting Jeff, which, he's the poster child for a sauna ambassador and an amazing sauna host.
Yeah. No. And everyone's always welcome to my sauna. And, I don't know, Kev Connell, if people know him. Kev has come up to sauna with me. Glenn Auerbach, from Sauna Times, he's probably sauned at my house 6-7 times. And, he literally will, if he's in town for business, even if I'm not at home, he'll get the thing hot before I even get home. And, whatever. I mean, me sauna is souk sauna.
Wonderful.
So anybody that is we're 20 miles or so north of Milwaukee. If you're in the area, give me a yell, and I'm always up for a sauna.
So I've got a couple questions that popped into my head while we were talking, while we have you on. So if you won the sauna lottery, you've already owned a few different types of saunas: electric, wood burning, tent, barrel. What would your next one be? So that's the first question, and then I have a second question after that.
Ooh. It would probably be I would say something where there was a built-in a cold plunge with a filter and a refrigeration system, with a pretty elaborate cold plunge, that would be filtered and, like controlled and kept cold. That would be probably the main element. I think, the hot room side of things, it doesn't have to get too elaborate, to be honest. And that would just be more of a matter of convenience, to have a temperature controlled cold plunge that was always at like 38 degrees and always cold and always clean. But the hot room, I think I'd be happy with, an 8x8 or a fairly small hot room, maybe 8-foot ceilings, and probably would, I'd probably use a Kuma stove. I mean, I'm not trying to plug Kuma. I'm just, that's just what I have, and I'm happy with it. So I've seen some really elaborate saunas, but I don't think they have to be elaborate. I'm sometimes more enamored with the simple ones that people did not spend a lot of money on. And, so yeah, I don't think it's so much a matter of how much you spend. It's you can have a really good sauna without spending a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely, Jeff. I'm a big fan of the DIY community. I built I've built both my saunas kind of on the budget side of things, using a little maybe non-traditional kind of construction. But yeah, if you've got a nice wood bench with a lot of hot rocks and you can get that thing to 200 degrees, I don't care if you spend $10 on it or $10,000 on it. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
And then the second question, are there any, you've traveled, you said you went to Sauna Days.
Yep.
I know you've used the traveling sauna. We met at Chicago Sweat Lodge, which is a wonderful place. I recommend everyone visit there. Are there any other saunas in North America that would be on your list to check out one of these days?
Well, if I could find a good Savu sauna somewhere in northern Wisconsin, I'd love to try it. I know you probably know of a few secret ones, but no.
I know of one secret one and then one public one.
Okay.
Our friend Catskill Weather out in New York.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'd love to try his. But beyond that, I'd love to get to Finland and, you know, explore a few of those really. I'd like to try a sauna with the Ito Kiwas AK-47. I'd like to try, you know, obviously a Savu sauna. But yeah, those are sort of on my bucket list.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a Sauna sauna in about 3 weeks' time, so I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. I have this stupid question, and I ask you, all of you. So we are North American Sauna Society is to spread the word, because you know, we feel that again we agreed upon that sauna sales have doubled, but the sauna culture in itself is in its, you know, growing phases. So not many people are so much in the know as you are, Jeff. So we are working on this sauna ambassadorship program, and we try to, we're at the brainstorming stage there, but an idea came to our minds that I belong. It's not my sauna, it's my good buddy's sauna. So I belong to this bunch of people. We get together, like I said before, you know, maybe every 3 weeks to saunabate together. What about just for the fun of it? Start asking people around, like, you know, do you belong to one? And if you wanna, like, you know, let us, the North American Sauna Society, know about it. Not that it would be common knowledge, you know. We don't want people lining up if you don't want people lining up on your door, but just like, you know, to start telling these stories about people getting together for authentic sauna bathing. Do you guys think that that's like too much, or do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I mean, it's very similar to a lot of the things that I've heard going on in the Twin Cities, especially I think of the 612 Sauna Society kind of comes to my mind, where they have a cooperative that I think is member owned.
Correct.
And so I've got a chance to use that. That's I enjoy seeing things like that exist out in the wild.
Yeah. No, I mean, in Duluth with Justin, and he's doing a barge sauna that is going to be up in Duluth, Minnesota. And, you know, people, you know, it costs money to do it. So, you know, you have to pay for some bench time, but I think that's a great way to for people to experience authentic sauna, is to connect with one of these either a co-op, or if someone has a mobile sauna that you can you know, you can buy space, or have a group that can use it for an event or something like that. So see that happening more and more, but I'm not sure how to. It seems to be so focused. It's crazy in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota. How many people there was 150 people up at Larchmont, and I felt like I was at a trade convention, because there were so many people there now in the sauna business, you know. or doing mobile sauna or whatever. But how do we get it wider, and how do we spread the word to, like, Milwaukee? There's nothing really going on in Wisconsin, like southeast Wisconsin, sauna wise, maybe a little bit in Madison, but not much,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Michigan or places like that. But there's a long way to go.
Well, I mean, you've built 2 saunas. Sam has built 2 saunas. We built a sauna ourselves. And like, I would just encourage people, it's not as difficult as you think. Get involved with the online communities, be willing to ask lots of questions and try and understand. You'll get lots of different opinions. That's okay. Try and understand the whys behind what people are seeing. And I would say to go for it, to build something that you can, and build it outside and a little bigger. Jeff's saunas are large enough that he can invite people and put a few people in his saunas. It's nice to be able to host some people as well.
Yeah, and it could be kind of a, sort of a one-on-one, or you invite a couple people over here and there. And I know over the years, especially with my kids and their friends, I've turned a lot of people on to sauna, and some of them have built their own saunas, so it's just how it happens. It's got to be somewhat organic, and it's got to be person to person, maybe relational, and you just have to share the real deal, though, so people can feel it and they know what's right, and and they can enjoy it.
That is so true, and I guess I might be wrong, but I feel that one of the aspects of sauna that is lacking, and hence the question before, is the social aspect of things. But like you, Jeff, before moving to the US, I had in my apartment building, and I had a time slot for sauna every Friday evening, not very late in the evening, but I usually went there after a long work week. I went there myself. Between my off the hot room time, I was staring out the window, looking at the sea, and I was just in silence, enjoying a beverage. And I that was such a huge and fantastic thing. We are on our 3 last minutes. So, gentlemen, any last questions for Jeff? On my behalf, this has been a fantastic discussion already so far, but any final words?
Yeah, just one question from me, Jeff. Like the Sauna Days event that you went to, are there any other public sauna events that you might be looking forward to, or anything that you have planned for the summer?
Not really for the summer. I mean, just it's kind of the lake, our lake is open, and we're going to be up there this summer and enjoying sauna with our friends and family. So looking forward to that. And we usually have some good weekends where we keep the thing hot just about all weekend long. So it comes in handy to have an electric sauna where you can just keep pressing the button and keep it hot. But I'm open to, I think, I feel like next year it was 440 miles to get up to Larchmont from where I live, 6.5-hour drive, but I enjoyed it. I think I'll be back next year, and hopefully someone will maybe come up with something we can do out there. We can pack our bags and make plans. If anyone wants to do another event like that, I'm all game.
Wonderful. Well, you might have to go a few more miles to come to my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Or New York, yes.
Well, it's been my pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we can all meet again on the bench someday soon.
And Jeff, anybody with a mustache like that can't be wrong.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.